Have you ever had one of those moments that completely changes your life, but not in the way you'd expect? Maybe it's something small, like an offhand comment or an awkward encounter. For me, it happened when my straight roommate walked into the bathroom while I was showering. And trust me, it wasn't just embarrassing. It changed everything. If you've ever wondered how a single moment can unravel secrets, challenge relationships, and force you to confront who you really are, then this video is for you. Today, I'm sharing a deeply personal story about living with someone who sees you every day but doesn't fully know you, and what happens when they start to see more than you're ready to show. By the end of this video, you'll understand why vulnerability isn't just scary, it's also transformative. But before we dive in, take a second to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. This channel is all about real stories that explore identity, connection, and the messy beauty of being human. Let's get started. It's funny how life-changing moments can happen when you least expect them. For me, it all started in the shower, a place where most people go to relax, reflect, or escape from the chaos of the outside world. But for me, it became ground zero for a series of events that would test my courage, shake up my friendships, and push me to face parts of myself I'd kept hidden for years. Let me back up a little so you can understand how we got here. My name's Alex, or at least, that's what I'll call myself for this story, and I share an apartment with my straight roommate, Chris. He's one of those guys who seems like he stepped out of a sitcom, perpetually messy, always cracking jokes, and somehow oblivious to pretty much everything around him. Don't get me wrong, he's a great guy. We've lived together for over a year now, and despite his quirks like leaving empty soda cans on the coffee table, he's been a solid friend. But there's something you should know about me, something Chris doesn't know. I'm gay. And while coming out might seem straightforward to some people, it hasn't been easy for me. Living with someone who's straight makes it harder to figure out how and when to say those three words, I'm not straight. So instead, I've spent months pretending I don't notice the way he talks about women, pretending I don't feel uncomfortable when his friends make homophobic jokes during poker nights, and pretending that none of it bothers me as much as it actually does. Still, things weren't always tense between us. Most days, we got along fine. We bonded over shared meals, binge-watched TV shows late into the night, and even had our own inside jokes. But there were moments, little cracks in the foundation, that hinted at bigger issues beneath the surface. Like the time I accidentally walked in on him changing clothes, and we both froze like deer caught in headlights. Or the time he asked me why I didn't have a girlfriend yet, and I mumbled something vague about focusing on work. Those moments always left me feeling uneasy, like I was balancing on a tightrope, waiting for the moment I'd slip and fall. And then, one day, he walked in while I was showering. Now, before you jump to conclusions, let me clarify, it wasn't romantic or dramatic or anything like that. At least, not at first. But what happened next sent shockwaves through our friendship in ways neither of us could have predicted. Stick around because this story gets messy, raw, and surprisingly hopeful. You'll hear about awkward conversations, unexpected breakthroughs, and the kind of growth that only comes from facing your fears head-on. If you're curious about how two people can navigate uncharted territory together, and maybe learn a thing or two about yourself along the way, you won't want to miss this. So grab some popcorn, settle in, and join me as I take you through the twists and turns of what happened after that fateful day in the shower. Oh, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you're excited to hear the rest of the story. We'll be diving deeper into the aftermath soon. Welcome to the channel, and thank you for being here. Alright, let's rewind to that day, the one I didn't see coming. It started out like any other morning. Alarm blaring at 7 a.m., coffee brewing in the kitchen, and me dragging myself into the bathroom half asleep. Nothing unusual, right? Just another ordinary Tuesday, or so I thought. Now, here's the thing about sharing an apartment with someone, you get used to their routines. Chris usually sleeps in until the last possible second, scrambles to get ready, and bolts out the door without much time to spare. So when I stepped into the shower around 8:15, I wasn't exactly worried about interruptions. After all, he was always gone by then, or so I assumed. The water was warm, the steam rising steadily, and for a few blissful minutes, it felt like the world outside had disappeared. That's the magic of showers, isn't it? They're these little pockets of privacy where you can think, unwind, or just zone out. But trust me, no amount of hot water could have prepared me for what happened next. It started with the sound, a faint creak of the door hinge. At first, I figured it was just the wind or maybe my imagination playing tricks on me. But then came the unmistakable shuffle of footsteps, followed by silence. And then, oh God, the curtain pulled back just enough for light to spill into the shower. My heart stopped. I turned my head slowly, already knowing who it was before I even saw him standing there. Chris, standing frozen in the doorway, his hand still gripping the edge of the shower curtain, looking as shocked as I felt. For a split second, neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. Time seemed to stretch endlessly, even though it was probably only a matter of seconds. All I could think was, this cannot be happening. My mind raced through every worst-case scenario. Did he notice how panicked I looked? Could he tell I was holding my breath, trying desperately not to make eye contact? Was this going to ruin everything between us? But here's the part that really threw me off: Chris didn't leave. Instead, he stood there, staring at me with this strange expression I couldn't quite read. Shock, confusion, something else entirely. Whatever it was, it made the moment feel 10 times more awkward than it already was. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I managed to stammer something along the lines of, wrong bathroom. It was lame, I know, but I was grasping at straws. Anything to break the tension. To his credit, Chris snapped out of it pretty quickly. He muttered something about needing a towel, grabbed one from the rack, and bolted out of the room faster than I'd ever seen him move. The whole thing lasted less than 30 seconds, but it felt like hours. When the door clicked shut behind him, I exhaled, a shaky, uneven breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My hands were trembling, and my chest felt tight, like I'd just run a marathon. I leaned against the tiled wall of the shower, letting the water pour over me, trying to process what had just happened. What did happen, exactly? Sure, it was embarrassing, but there was something deeper beneath the surface. Something unspoken. Why hadn't Chris left immediately? And why did he seem so unsettled afterward? I replayed the scene in my head over and over again, searching for answers. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he was just caught off guard and didn't know how to react. Or maybe, just maybe, it meant something more. Little did I know, that brief encounter in the shower would set off a chain reaction neither of us could have anticipated. It wasn't just about walking in on someone naked, it was about seeing someone differently. Vulnerable. Human. As I finished rinsing off and stepped out of the shower, wrapping myself in a towel, I couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to change. For better or worse, there was no going back now. Okay, let's talk about the aftermath. Because trust me, if you think walking in on someone in the shower is awkward, try living with them afterward. That moment didn't just disappear once the bathroom door clicked shut, it lingered. It hung in the air like a thick fog, impossible to ignore, no matter how hard we both tried. When I finally emerged from the shower, wrapped in a towel and still trying to shake off the adrenaline rush, I half expected Chris to be waiting outside to apologize or explain himself. But he wasn't there. Instead, the apartment was eerily quiet, save for the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I glanced toward his room as I passed by, wondering if he was hiding inside, too embarrassed to face me. Or maybe he'd already left for work. Either way, I decided not to press the issue, at least not yet. After all, what do you even say after something like that? Hey, sorry you saw me naked. Yeah, no thanks. But avoiding each other wasn't exactly an option. We shared the same space, the same fridge, the same Wi-Fi password. Sooner or later, we were bound to cross paths again. And when we did, well, things got weird. Really weird. The first sign came later that evening when Chris finally came home. He greeted me with this overly cheerful, "Hey, man." Like he was auditioning for a toothpaste commercial. Normally, I'd brush it off as just another one of his quirks, but this time it felt forced. Like he was trying way too hard to act normal. Then there was the eye contact, or lack thereof. Every time our paths crossed in the hallway or the kitchen, he'd suddenly find something fascinating to look at. The floor, the ceiling, his phone screen. Anything but me. Meanwhile, I was doing my best to play it cool, pretending nothing had happened while secretly analyzing every little thing he said or did. It wasn't just him, though. I was guilty of overthinking too. Did he notice anything unusual about my body language during that split second in the shower? Was he putting pieces together in his head, things I hadn't meant for him to see? The questions swirled endlessly, keeping me up at night. And then there were the close calls, the near conversations where one of us would start to bring it up, only to chicken out at the last second. Like the time I casually mentioned needing to clean the bathroom, and Chris immediately chimed in with, "Oh yeah, totally. Bathrooms are gross." Neither of us acknowledged the elephant in the room, but we both knew what we were really talking about. To make matters worse, life doesn't pause just because you're dealing with awkward tension. Bills needed paying, groceries needed buying, and dishes piled up in the sink regardless of how uncomfortable we felt around each other. So we kept going through the motions, tiptoeing around the subject like it might explode if we touched it. But here's the thing about unresolved tension, it has a way of bubbling to the surface eventually. And sure enough, about a week later, it finally boiled over. We were sitting on opposite ends of the couch, pretending to watch some random Netflix show neither of us was actually paying attention to. The silence between us was deafening, broken only by the occasional cough or rustle of movement. Then, out of nowhere, Chris blurted out, "Look, we need to talk." My stomach dropped. Those 4 words are never a good sign, are they? They're the universal signal for something serious is about to happen. Part of me wanted to laugh nervously and change the subject, but deep down, I knew we couldn't keep avoiding this forever. So I nodded slowly, bracing myself for whatever came next. Was he going to confront me about being gay? Apologize profusely for invading my privacy? Or maybe, just maybe, he was starting to realize that this whole situation went deeper than either of us had anticipated. Whatever it was, I could tell this conversation was going to change everything. Again. All right, let's talk about the moment we both knew we couldn't keep pretending anymore. That heart-to-heart conversation wasn't just uncomfortable, it was raw, vulnerable, and completely uncharted territory for both of us. If you've ever wondered what happens when 2 people finally stop dancing around the truth and say what needs to be said, this is it. It started on that couch, the same one where we'd been sitting in silence for weeks, avoiding each other's eyes and dodging the elephant in the room. But this time, Chris didn't back down. He turned off the TV, set his phone face down on the coffee table, and looked at me with a seriousness I hadn't seen from him before. "Look," he began, his voice steady but tinged with nerves, "I know things have been weird between us lately. And I think it's because of, the shower thing." For a second, I froze. My brain scrambled to process what he'd just said. Was he really bringing it up? Out loud? In front of me? Part of me wanted to laugh it off or deflect with some joke about how awkward showers can be, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the sincerity in his tone, or maybe it was the way he refused to break eye contact. Instead, I nodded slowly, giving him permission to continue. "I mean," he went on, fidgeting with the hem of his shirt, "it's not every day you walk in on your roommate naked, right? Like, that's not normal. And I've been thinking about it a lot, and I realized, I don't think it's just about being embarrassed or whatever. There's something else going on here. Something bigger." My heart skipped a beat. Was he hinting at what I thought he was hinting at? Or was I reading too much into it? Either way, I couldn't stay silent anymore. "You're right," I admitted, my voice quieter than I intended. "It's not just about the shower. It's about everything else. All the stuff we haven't talked about." Chris tilted his head, clearly curious but also cautious. "What do you mean?" Here's where it got hard. This was the part I'd been dreading for months, not just telling him the truth, but facing the possibility that it might change everything between us. Still, I took a deep breath and plunged ahead. "I'm gay," I said simply, letting the words hang in the air. There it was, out in the open. No more hiding, no more pretending. Just 3 small words that carried so much weight. Chris blinked, processing. Then, after a long pause, he asked, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" The question caught me off guard. Not because it was unexpected, but because it came from a place of genuine curiosity rather than judgment. Most people would have reacted with shock or discomfort, but Chris sounded almost hurt. Like my silence had been a betrayal. "I didn't know how," I admitted. "I mean, you're straight, and we live together, and I didn't want things to get weird." Plus, you're always talking about dating women, and your friends make those jokes sometimes, and I trailed off, unsure of how to finish. Chris nodded slowly, absorbing everything I'd said. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The weight of the conversation settled over us like a heavy blanket, suffocating but necessary. Finally, he broke the silence. I get it, he said softly. I mean, I don't fully understand what it's like to be in your shoes, but I get why you felt like you couldn't tell me. And honestly, I feel kind of stupid for not noticing sooner. His honesty surprised me. I expected defensiveness or confusion, but instead, he owned his role in the situation, how his obliviousness might have made me feel invisible. It's not your fault, I assured him quickly. You didn't do anything wrong. I just kept it hidden because I was scared. Well, you don't have to be scared anymore, he replied firmly. Not with me, anyway. I'm still the same guy the first was before. You know, messy, bad at cooking, terrible at remembering birthdays, but now I also know something important about you. And that doesn't change anything between us. If anything, it makes me want to be a better friend. His words hit me like a tidal wave. Relief washed over me, followed by gratitude, and, if I'm being honest, a little bit of guilt for doubting him all this time. We spent the next hour talking, really talking, about everything. About my fears of coming out, about his own experiences growing up in a world that often shames vulnerability, and about how we could move forward without letting this define our friendship. It wasn't perfect, there were moments of hesitation, questions that didn't have easy answers, and even a few awkward laughs. But it was real. By the end of the night, I felt lighter, like a weight I'd been carrying for years had finally lifted. For the first time since moving in together, I saw Chris not just as my roommate, but as someone who truly accepted me for who I am. Of course, this conversation didn't magically erase all the challenges ahead. Living with someone means navigating ups and downs, whether you're dealing with shared bills, differing schedules, or deeper issues like identity and trust. But for the first time, I felt hopeful about where things were headed. After that heart-to-heart conversation, things between Chris and me started to shift, not all at once, but gradually. It wasn't like flipping a switch, it was more like planting a seed and watching it grow. At first, there were moments of awkwardness, sure, but they were different this time, less about avoidance and more about learning how to navigate our new dynamic. Let me tell you, opening up to someone changes everything. Suddenly, the little things we used to take for granted became opportunities to connect on a deeper level. Like when Chris started asking questions, not intrusive ones, but thoughtful ones. What's it like dating as a gay guy? He'd ask over breakfast. Or, do people ever say stuff that makes you uncomfortable? At first, I wasn't sure how to respond. No one had ever asked me those kinds of questions before, at least not without judgment or pity. But Chris, he just listened. Really listened, and even though his understanding was still growing, his effort meant the world to me. Then there were the small gestures, things that might seem insignificant to outsiders but felt monumental to me. Like the time he accidentally called me, man, during a phone call with his buddies and immediately corrected himself, saying, "Oh wait, sorry, Alex isn't into labels." It made me laugh, but it also showed me he was paying attention, and trying. Of course, it wasn't always smooth sailing. Sometimes, his attempts to be supportive came out clumsy or overly enthusiastic. Like the week he decided to binge-watch every LGBTQ+ movie on Netflix. Every single one. By Friday, I walked into the living room to find him sobbing through Love, Simon while clutching a box of tissues. "Dude," I said, raising an eyebrow, "you're literally crying harder than I did." He wiped his eyes and grinned sheepishly. "I can't help it. This is important stuff." As annoying as it was sometimes, I couldn't stay mad at him. His heart was in the right place, and honestly, seeing him care so much about something that mattered to me made me feel seen in a way I never had before. But it wasn't just about the big gestures or heartfelt talks. Our friendship evolved in quieter, subtler ways too. We started spending more time together, not because we had to share an apartment, but because we genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Movie nights turned into debates about plot twists. Grocery runs became impromptu brainstorming sessions for dinner recipes, most of which ended in disaster. Even cleaning the bathroom, which used to be a chore, became less painful when we turned it into a competition to see who could scrub faster. Still, life has a funny way of testing relationships, doesn't it? Just when you think things are going well, something comes along to shake things up. For us, that something happened when a new roommate moved in, a friend of Chris's named Jake. Jake seemed nice enough at first, laid back, easygoing, the kind of guy who fit right in with Chris's crowd. But then came the jokes. Harmless at first, but quickly crossing the line into homophobic territory. Things like calling something gay when he meant stupid, or making snide comments about pride parades. I tried to brush it off at first, telling myself it wasn't worth stirring the pot. But Chris noticed. Oh, he noticed. One evening, after Jake made yet another offhand remark about those people, Chris finally snapped. "Hey," he said sharply, cutting Jake off mid-sentence. "Knock it off, alright. That kind of crap isn't cool, and it sure as hell isn't welcome here." The room went silent. Jake looked stunned, glancing between Chris and me like he didn't know what to say. "What?" Jake stammered. "I was just kidding around." "No, you weren't," Chris shot back. "You've been doing this since you got here, and it stops now." Got it. I sat there, frozen, barely able to believe what I was hearing. Chris had stood up for me, in front of his own friend. Not because he felt obligated to, but because he cared. Later that night, after Jake had gone to bed, Chris plopped down on the couch next to me with a sigh. "Sorry about that," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. "I should have said something sooner." "You don't have to apologize," I told him, my voice soft but firm. "You didn't do anything wrong. Actually, you did everything right." He smiled faintly, looking relieved. "Good. Because I meant what I said. You're my friend, Alex, and no one gets to treat you like crap, not even my friends." That moment solidified something I hadn't fully realized until then. Our bond wasn't just stronger, it was unshakable. Through honesty, vulnerability, and mutual respect, we'd built a friendship that could weather anything. And yet, there was still something lingering beneath the surface. Something neither of us had addressed directly. It wasn't romantic, at least, not in the traditional sense. But there were moments when I caught Chris looking at me differently. Moments when his tone softened, or his gaze lingered just a fraction longer than usual. Was it gratitude? Admiration? Curiosity? I couldn't tell. All I knew was that our relationship had changed in ways neither of us could have predicted. What started as awkward tension had transformed into something deeper, richer, and infinitely more meaningful. Alright, let's talk about where we are now, how far we've come since that fateful day in the shower. Because here's the thing about life-changing moments, they don't just alter the course of your day or week, they reshape everything. They force you to confront truths you've been avoiding, challenge relationships you thought were set in stone, and push you to grow in ways you never imagined. For Chris and me, the journey hasn't been perfect. There have been missteps, misunderstandings, and moments of doubt along the way. But looking back, I can honestly say that walking into each other's lives, literally and figuratively, was one of the best things that ever happened to us. Let's start with the obvious. Our friendship is stronger than ever. It's not just about shared meals or late-night conversations anymore, it's about trust. The kind of trust that comes from knowing someone sees you for who you really are and accepts you anyway. Whether it's laughing over burnt toast in the kitchen or supporting each other through tough days, there's a sense of ease between us now that wasn't there before. But beyond the everyday moments, something deeper has shifted. Remember those lingering looks I mentioned earlier? Those moments when Chris seemed to see me in a new light. Well, let's just say they didn't go unnoticed. One evening, after a particularly long day, we found ourselves sitting on the couch again, the same one where so many pivotal conversations had taken place. This time, though, the atmosphere felt different. Quieter. Heavier. "Hey," Chris said suddenly, breaking the silence. "Can I ask you something?" I turned to look at him, curious. "Sure. What's up?" He hesitated for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. Then he asked, "Do you ever wonder what could have happened, if things were different?" My heart skipped a beat. Was he talking about us? About the possibility of something more? Or was I reading too much into it again? I mean, he continued, seeming to sense my confusion, we've been through so much together. And yeah, I'm straight, or at least, I thought I was, but being around you, seeing how you live your truth without apology, it makes me question things. About myself. About what I want. His honesty caught me off guard. Part of me wanted to jump in and reassure him, to tell him he didn't need to figure everything out right away. But another part of me couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. I don't know what's going to happen, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. But I do know this, I care about you. A lot. More than I should, maybe. And I think I owe it to both of us to figure out why. We sat there for a while, letting his words sink in. There was no dramatic declaration, no grand gesture, just raw, unfiltered honesty. And you know what? That was enough. Since then, we've taken things slowly. Not because either of us is scared, but because we respect each other too much to rush into anything. For now, we're exploring this connection, not labeling it, not forcing it, but simply seeing where it leads. Does that mean we'll end up together? Maybe, maybe not. But here's the beautiful thing, it doesn't matter. What matters is that we've created a space where vulnerability isn't feared, where questions are welcomed, and where growth is celebrated. Looking back, I realized that the shower incident wasn't just an embarrassing moment, it was a catalyst. It forced me to confront my fears, pushed Chris to examine his own biases and assumptions, and ultimately brought us closer than either of us could have anticipated. So, what's the takeaway from all of this? Life is messy. Relationships are complicated. And sometimes, the most unexpected moments lead to the most profound connections. Whether it's learning to accept yourself, standing up for someone you care about, or simply being open to change, these experiences shape us in ways we can't always predict. If you've stuck with me through this story, thank you. Thank you for listening, for relating, and for reminding me why sharing stories like this matters. If it resonated with you, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support means the world, and it keeps content like this coming your way. And hey, if you've got your own story about vulnerability, connection, or unexpected change, I'd love to hear it. Because at the end of the day, we're all navigating this messy, beautiful thing called life, and none of us are doing it alone. Thanks for joining me on this journey. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and remember, sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the most rewarding outcomes.